Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to the M4J Network here on OpenTTD. Now, the last couple of weeks we've been taking it slow and steady with some heritage trains, and I stand by what I've been saying about the heritage movement. It is fundamentally important that we preserve as much as we can, and that does tie into something very, very nicely that I'll be talking about a little bit later on. For now, though, I'm going to tell you what we're doing today. So today's video is all about the Western Reaches South and getting that finished between Gardcity and Sanley Central via the Western Reaches South line, as the name suggests. I believe today we're adding 3 slow services, one between Gardcity St Michael and Kindinghattan Airport Parkway, one between Kindinghattan Airport Parkway and between New Puston and Sanley Central, and one between Kindinghattan Airport Parkway and Sanley Central. I was trying to remember the order in which I did them. We've then got 3 express services, one between GSMI and Sanley via Fort Flonwood Parkway and Kindinghattan Airport Parkway, one via Dindtown, Fort Flonwood. I think it stops at Portfield as well, maybe it doesn't. Basically more of a stopping service, and then I also have one that terminates at Kindinghattan Airport Parkway that stops at all the main stations along the way, and that includes things like I don't think it stops at Sanington, but it does stop at Portfield, it does stop at New Puston, and it does also stop at Dindtown, and I believe, does it stop at Sanington? No, I don't think it does. I don't think it does stop at Sanington. I might have made that up. Anyway, got some conversation topics to talk about as well. Before we do that, though, I do want to talk about something to do with the patch that I'm playing on. So this is the JGR patch pack, as you know. This is the latest version of the patch, and patch pack. Sorry, I've got to distinguish that because patches and patch packs are not the same thing. Believe it or not, a patch pack is a pack of patches, whereas a patch itself is, it's like a mod, basically, to the game. There isn't a new GRF. It gets a bit murky when you start investigating exactly what means in this game. Basically, a new GRF is a graphical change or some minor light gameplay changes, things like cargo, for example. So if you have furs or fish, then the cargo will change. Things like underwater tunnels, or chunnels, I believe they're called. And things like scheduled dispatch is also a patch. And it's very, very talented people like JGR who combine all those patches together into a patch pack. And that is what I'm using, the latest version of the JGR patch pack, which includes, for the first time that I've seen, at least, realistic braking. Now, this is a massive, massive game changer for me, because since I switched to my speed limits being controlled through signals and not through waypoints, I've had to set up, for example, the Western Reaches South line would have required, I believe, 12 signals on every side of the junction on the fast lines for trains that were switching tracks. Now I can do it with 2, which is so much easier. 2 on each side, 4 in total. And for the slow lines, just 1 each side. So I've gone from needing something like 20 signals to needing 6. And that is a massive, massive difference. Obviously, there are still processes in place that I've got. You know, everyone else's might differ as to how trains slow down. I could, in theory, just do it with 1 signal on each side for both fast and slow. But I tried to keep things a little bit more, I want to say realistic, but I mean the realistic braking does do things very, very realistically for me, I should say. Basically, realistic braking means that a train will gradually slow down to whichever target speed you've set. It won't just jump from 100 down to 40 like that. And that is an absolute game changer for someone like me who cares about realism. Realistic acceleration has been in the game for a long, long time now, and you see how trains gradually speed up, particularly on inclines as well. It has an effect, and you will see that the same applies for realistic braking. And actually, there are some videos that I've recorded for the Network Overview series that are heavily affected by the gradients on the line. So, for example, between Munfingford, Paragon and Gardcity St Mark, along that stretch of line, there is a section where the line slopes down, I think, 2 or 3 tiles in one go, or 2 or 3 gradients in, 2 or 3 levels in one go. and the brakes overheat on the train. You will actually see the train grind to a halt. So it's broken down, brakes overheating. And originally I thought that might be a problem, but actually I like it. I actually like that feature. I don't like breakdowns normally. They get in the way and they ruin the game for me. But this one actually feels quite realistic because it makes you think about how you design your networks a lot more. This isn't just something that's hard-coded into the game. Your train will break down when its reliability hits this number. This is something that is actually explicitly dictated by how you build your railways. So if you have railways that go up and down steep gradients, you will have trains now struggling in both directions and not just going uphill. Now they will struggle going downhill too. And this was also proved when I tried to have the realistic braking applied to the North Valleys line and also to what was the other one? I can't remember what the other one was, but the North Valleys line especially, it's quite hilly between Sanington and Honningville. And I actually had the case where trains weren't slowing down fast enough to stop at some of the stations. So Keybourne Cross, where the North Valleys line crosses over the Great Northern line, that had to be rebuilt. That's now on a higher level than it was before because trains were overshooting and therefore missing that stop, technically missing that stop, but still having it in their schedule. And it was messing up all the orders. And I had like 20 trains queued up at Warnbridge because they had nowhere to go. And that was all caused by the fact that there was a little slope just before the station. So I've rebuilt that station, and I've also rebuilt Sudingstone, I think it is, where it connects with the Capital line, to stop that from happening. And those were fortunately the only two stations so far where that was really an issue. I did have a couple of other little problems elsewhere. I think the Gardcity Western Railway franchise had to have a couple of tweaks here and there as well. But overall, no biggie. It was, perfectly fine. It took me 5 minutes just to lift stations up or reprofile some of the track. And I'm going to incorporate it now. If a train has brakes that overheat, that's part of the canon now of the network. So you will see the next route overview, the network overview video will be going up, I want to say next week, but I don't want to promise that because, again, I've got 5 or 6 recorded and I've put up a poll for you guys to decide which you'd like to see next after the Munfingford one. It looks like we're going to GSMA, sorry, so you will get to see the brakes overheating, like I said. And you will see how I've decided to incorporate that now into the canon of the series. I think it works out quite well. I'll leave it up to you guys to decide officially, though, but I quite like it. I like the challenge it presents as well. It makes me think a lot more about how I'm building my routes, which is something that I've not really had before. Not at least since I removed waypoints. I don't have to worry about building huge straight pieces of track either side of stations now. But I do have to worry about, is there a big gradient just before a station? Because for acceleration and deceleration purposes now, it has a massive, massive impact. Anyway, on to the conversation points for today. So I kind of touched on news a little bit last week, but because we were talking about heritage railways last week, I tried to keep it more in line with heritage railways. But I did mention a couple of things that were sort of main headlines sticking out to me, headlines that I wanted to go over again this week, as well as some other ones that apply more for this week than last week. And I know we're almost through February now, so a lot of this is quite outdated, but some of it is stuff that will stick around for a little while still, and is therefore still very, very much relevant. So, for example, consultation into improving Manchester rail performance. This, again, is to do with the Castlefield corridor through the centre of Manchester. Now, the reason this is a big issue is because freight trains also use this line as well as passenger trains. So it's not just a case of increasing it to have 15 trains an hour going off in various directions, because that, I believe, is just for passenger traffic. You've also got to factor in freight movements as well. And I mentioned before about the Ordsall cord and how badly that idea was implemented for many, many reasons. And I'll quickly mention the reason this is related to the heritage movement. The Museum of Science and Industry is in the centre of Manchester. And that is where the original Manchester station was built. And I'm trying to remember what it's called. It wasn't Manchester Central, because that was on the Midland. It was something Road, I think it was, or something Lane. I apologise that I can't remember the exact name of the station, but it was part of the Museum of Science and Industry complex. It still is, to be fair. It still is. The reason that this Ordsall cord has affected the museum is because the museum used to be connected to the national network via a line that ran past what is now the Ordsall Chord. When the chord was built, that line was severed because the height difference wasn't enough for them to be able to build a bridge. At the time, there was a lot of outcry about that. I think perfectly justified, by the way. I think it was perfectly justified that there was outcry. It's another example of how heritage movements have to yield to present-day progress. And I do believe in progress, don't get me wrong. It's one of my arguments for High Speed 2 is we need to have this progress. Things do need to advance, otherwise we'll be forever stuck in the Stone Ages. But I feel like there should have been a better alternative to that. And we just, it wasn't done. It wasn't thought about. It wasn't thought through. And as it turns out, the Ordsall Chord as a whole wasn't thought through. There's a brilliant quote here from the Network Rail CEO, Andrew Haynes. The Ordsall Chord is a classic example of a fantastic piece of infrastructure which has unlocked great new journey opportunities, but where the new infrastructure was not supported by a sufficiently rigorous operating plan. Nobody really looked at how we would reliably operate 15 trains an hour across 6 flat junctions in the space of a few miles. Now, I've had this argument before on Discord with people, and it's not a case of who's right and who's wrong, but a lot of the points that have been made there by Mr. Haynes are kind of things that I was touching on as well, which is, it's all well and good building these things and saying theoretically 15 trains an hour will be able to operate here. The question is, how? How is that possible? And, you get called a cynic when you constantly question things. But at the end of the day, someone had to have sat there somewhere at some point and said, how are we actually going to achieve this? This is a 2-track main line through the centre of one of the UK's largest cities. There was potential to quadruple it. That wasn't taken on board. There was potential to grade separate some of the junctions. That wasn't taken on board. All they really cared about to get this project cleared was the fact that it would allow trains to run directly from Leeds to Liverpool, and it would allow trains to run directly from Manchester Airport to literally every town in the north of England, because that's the only benefit that I've really seen from this chord, is that now every single service in northern England starts and ends at Manchester Airport. Literally, it's a 4-track station now, Manchester Airport, and it has like 20 trains an hour or something stupid. I know it's not that high, don't comment. I know it's not that high. But it's a bit like me in the old days of OpenTTD, where I built an interchange station and I tried to make every single train on the network run through it. That seems to be what Manchester Airport is these days, and Manchester Piccadilly to an extent, and Oxford Road, and Manchester Victoria. It seems to have been that they just tried to get every single type of train that ran through Northern England to run at some point through this 2-track main line with all these flat junctions. And it's not working. Clearly it's not working. And it wasn't working before they built the chord. So they decided to build the chord and add more problems to the immediate issue. And no one actually came up and said, how are we going to achieve this again? How's it going to work? And it seems really, really short-sighted. And that's actually quite rare these days with these big rail infrastructure projects. Crossrail, amongst all its flaws, has been well thought out in many, many respects. There are still massive, whatever the infrastructure equivalent of a plot hole is. There are lots and lots of issues that need to be sorted still. Then it's a whole investigation into how it ran 3 years over time and God knows how many billions of pounds over budget. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about specifically is the actual project itself was well thought out. The capacity was well thought out. The fact that a lot of it is either replacing existing services or being separated from existing services so that it can operate a metro schedule to metro standards without interfering with anything else. They tried that in Manchester and it didn't work. Basically, it's not worked. You can't have a rail route like that with so many different divergent points and have it run flawlessly. Something needed to be done differently, whether it was building 4 tracks between Piccadilly and Oxford Road and then having 2 tracks go off to the left and 2 to the right, or whether it was grade separating the junctions, because if they did do that at Ordsall, then they wouldn't have had to have severed the connection to the Museum of Science and Industry, because, I don't know what the space is there, I don't know how big these junctions actually are, but you can imagine something like Hitchin, where the track diverges off in the opposite direction to where it's actually going, and then loops around and over the top or underneath. If it went over the top, then it would be at a height high enough that it could bridge over the connection to the museum. And then because that line would still need to be elevated to connect up on the other side, it would create that grade separation junction there as well. Again, I don't know the full specifics. That may not have been possible. If that wasn't possible, then maybe the main line itself could have been raised or lowered slightly as well to help factor all that in and make it work. All I know is I think they ballsed it up big time. And now they're coming up with these genius plans to supposedly fix it. And this is what I was saying a few weeks ago as well on the Discord, is they're trying to make themselves sound like heroes now because they're fixing a problem. But in reality, they're fixing a problem that they themselves directly caused, which doesn't make them a hero. If anything, that makes them like, Megamind. There's Megamind, isn't it? Will Ferrell film, where the big bad in the film is actually trying to make himself look like more of a hero than he actually is. So he creates problems and then comes out and fixes them. That's where I feel like we're at sometimes with Network Rail. They create these problems for themselves and then they swoop in with these multi-billion-pound solutions to problems that they could have fixed 10 years prior for an extra couple of $100 million. That to me doesn't sound like good business. That to me sounds like you're giving a penny or you're giving a pound and getting a penny, basically. It doesn't really make sense to me. Hopefully they do get it fixed. They've got 3 options on how to fix it. And I think one of the options right now, if they're going to keep the Castlefield corridor at 2 tracks, I think one of the sort of short-term temporary fixes would be combining trains at Piccadilly and then separating them again at Oxford Road. Again, not a good solution, I know. But it could be a way of making this work. So instead of having 2 trains running through close together, you combine them into a single train and run it through. I know there's been talk about tunnels linking Piccadilly and Victoria. That's quite expensive. That's a long-term solution. I think it's a good solution, especially if High Speed 2 and Northern Powerhouse are also factored into that plan. And you will take less traffic off of the viaducts. It would actually benefit air pollution if you've got diesel trains running around as well. But something definitely needs to be done. Maybe even finding a diversionary route for freight traffic. That would reduce a lot of the stress on the line as well. And I just can't believe this was allowed to happen in the first place. I can't believe, because there's no terminus facilities at Piccadilly from trains coming from the north. So Manchester Airport is used as that terminus facility. That's why it is the way it is. And most trains will terminate there and then reverse. Some go to Glasgow, some go to Edinburgh, some go to Newcastle, some go to Blackpool, I think, Wigan, Warrington, forgot the name then, Liverpool, lots of different destinations from Manchester Airport. And Manchester Airport, again, is one of the largest airports in the UK. So it does make sense. You know, it makes sense to have as many connections there as possible. I'm not disputing that. I just think it's really, really short-sighted that they built this whole new chord that added all this new traffic and they didn't factor in what the long-term problems would be. And they're even admitting it. That when the CEO of Network Rail is coming out and saying, why did we do this, guys? Then you know that there's a problem, for sure. Anyway. There are other topics, believe it or not, that I wanted to go through. Not got long to do it now. New tri-mode locomotives being ordered from Stadler. Class 93s. 30 of them have been ordered by the Rail Operations. I'm about to say Rail Operations Group, but that's different. Rail Operations Limited have ordered 30 Class 93s from Stadler. Now, these have been billed as tri-mode. I still argue that they're bi-mode because they have 25 kilovolt overhead electrification. They also run on diesel generators that generate power that goes through an alternator or a generator to create current. And they also run off battery power. Now, the reason I think this is bi-mode, not tri-mode, is because I still class battery power as being electric. Now, I know that technically applies to hydrogen as well. I don't think there will ever be a truly tri-mode locomotive right now because it's either diesel power or it's electric power. And I could be really pedantic and say this is uni-mode because it's diesel generation still. So it's not, the diesel engine doesn't directly drive the wheels. It drives an alternator that then generates power that then drives the wheels. So maybe I'm being a bit too pedantic here. Anyway, the good thing about this is they're based on the class 68 and 88 designs, but they have a top speed of 110 miles an hour, and they have been designated as mixed traffic locomotives. So I can almost picture these replacing the 68s on Trans-Pennine Express routes, because they can run on diesel power where there's no electrification, or battery power. And then as soon as there's some wires over the top of them, like in Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, Edinburgh, Glasgow, they can switch to overhead electrification. And immediately, the carbon footprint is a lot less. I'm looking at the power outputs here. It's 4,000 horsepower on 25 kV. And then it's 1,200 horsepower on the diesel. It does say diesel power plant, so maybe it is a diesel engine, in which case that would make it bi-mode. And the batteries provide an extra 400 kilowatts of extra power. I said extra twice. It will supplement the engine when the locomotive is running in diesel battery hybrid mode, as well as last mile carbon-free shunting operations. And I believe a bit like with the new Hitachi trains, I believe they're also making it so that starting and stopping at stations can be done under battery power and not diesel power, which will clean the air a lot more around stations as well, particularly where there's a lot of people in a small space and under roofs and things like that, and underground even. So I like this. I think it's cool. 110 miles an hour as well, so they're not sacrificing speed in order to make it more clean. The design itself looks very European, which you'd expect considering it's built by Stadler. And I kind of like that we're doing that now. I used to be quite anti-European. Not the idea of Europe, by the way. I want to make that clear. European designs, like the roundness of it, I never used to like. I quite liked the squareness of DMUs and EMUs here in the UK. But actually, the Stadler Kisses are really, really nice looking trains. And you know, the CAF units as well, the way that the little Darth Vader helmet they've got on the nose, that looks kind of cool as well. And I kind of like the fact that we are starting to spread our wings a little bit more and looking at other options. I think it's very, very good and exciting to see. Here's hoping that more and more companies now do take up this option. Although the thing, of course, I would like to see is existing traction being refitted to support this. A bit like the D-Train project, a bit like the 319/6. And Orion are involved in this project, actually. I saw their name mentioned. Where was that? I saw their name mentioned somewhere. Oh, yeah. Rail Operations is the parent company of the Rail Operations Group. So I was close. Traxion and Orion. And we know that Orion are currently refitting trains for freight operations with energy efficiency and also carbon neutrality as part of their mantra. So I hope this happens more. I hope this happens not just with new builds, but also with existing builds. And I hope that we can basically clean our act up a little bit more and get more clean and efficient trains running on the network, because that's one way to win over the people who are currently campaigning against all these new rail projects, is to actually prove that we're doing something about the key issues that they're raising. Because there's nothing against... I have nothing against the issues they're raising. I have a lot against the way they're choosing to raise these issues. And there is a big difference. I do believe that High Speed 2 will have a lot of damage on the environment to begin with. Hopefully that does get offset in the future. But for very, 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 very important reasons, the project does need to happen. It gets people off the roads. It gets people off of planes. It gets people off of the West Coast, which is also now becoming a massive bottleneck. And you can't keep adding more tracks to the West Coast main line. It's a bit like when you add extra lanes to a motorway. It gets to the point where the more lanes you add, the less it actually benefits. So it's good that these things are happening. It is good. And you've got things like the D-Train now that are proving that hydrogen and battery power can very easily be a supplement or even a replacement for... do they mean the same thing? They probably mean the same thing. It can be a replacement for diesel power. Hydrogen is still very much in its infancy, but battery operation is fast becoming a good solution. You charge off the wires or the rails, and then when there's no more wires and rails, you flick over to battery mode, and you lose a little bit of power, but ultimately you don't have to switch to diesel, which is a lot cleaner and a lot more efficient as well. And I believe the acceleration rates are still faster with batteries than they are with diesel engines. But yeah, those are just my 2 cents, guys. Hopefully you guys agree. If you don't, for whatever reason, please do get involved in the conversation. You can find me either in the comments down below or preferably over on Discord or Reddit. There's lots of people there now. We're really building a community. There's lots of conversation happening. The channel's going to be growing a lot soon in the near future, I hope. So a lot of it's going to be football related because of the Hatfield connections, but I would like to grow this side of things too, because as I've always said, these are my main 3 interests, and maybe if I can get a partnership with Alton Towers one day, I might bring Planet Coaster back as well. But for now, at least, let's get the conversation going, guys. And until then, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course, if you're enjoying the series, drop those comments down below, as I've said. Besides all that, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. And until next time, I will see you soon.